Now, some people think that the first Mars landing might look something like that. Our guests have varying views on the best ways to survive on Mars. Joining us now, one of the most knowledgeable and vocal cheerleaders for humans to Mars is Dr. Robert Zubrin. He is head of Pioneer Astronautics. He is a space exploration, well, this is a space exploration research and development firm. He has written a book, The Case for Mars, The Plan to Settle a Red Planet, and Why We Must. Dr. Robert Zubrin. Dr. Zubrin, nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, I understand that you have been called the de facto chairman of the underground Mars. How did you achieve this title? What does that mean?
Well, I've been called lots of things, so I guess I can live with that one. I'm an astronautical engineer by trade, and I used to do mission design for the Martin Company, which is the company that built the Surveyor probe on the way to Mars.
But it sounds like you've achieved this as a result of doing all your work on this Mars Direct plan. Well,
yeah, I mean, back in 1989, President Bush called for an initiative to send humans to Mars, and the Space Exploration Initiative. And that was basically derailed when a huge NASA team, which basically had too many cooks in it, cooked up a giant mission plan for doing it with giant spaceships going to Mars built on giant orbiting platforms.
Very expensive.
$450 billion in 30 years, and they killed it. And
so you created a plan of your own? Yeah,
well, what happened was we at Martin put together a team of people, 12 people, called the Scenario Development Team, and I was one of them, to come up with an alternative plan that could do it in a much quicker, much more cost-effective way. And what I and another fellow named David Baker came up with was this Mars Direct plan, which, see, the key is this. See, Mars is rich in resources. That's why it's so interesting to explore, but that's also what makes it feasible to explore. You got a planet whose atmosphere is the ideal feedstock for making rocket fuel and oxygen. And most of what the NASA giant spaceship was sending to Mars was the rocket fuel and oxygen it needed to come home. So if you take a page from the books of our pioneer forebears and adopt the kind of travel light and live off the land philosophy, you can do this mission much cheaper, much quicker. I would say...
Now you would say, go ahead, sorry, you say go directly to Mars, skip the moon, right?
Well, you can't skip the moon because we've already gone to the moon. Well. But look, we're in much better position today to send people to Mars than we were to send people to the moon in 1961 when John F. Kennedy started the moon program. I mean, when Kennedy announced the moon initiative, we had 15 minutes of manned spaceflight experience. We didn't know if human beings could eat in space. Okay? It takes 6 months to fly to Mars. Shannon Lucid just spent 6 months in space, and by the way, came down in great shape. Okay? So we know that we can get people to Mars. Now, we don't have every single piece of hardware right now that we need, but overall, okay, we've got 80% of the technology we need, and we could easily have the rest if we want to.
When do you think, I mean, if you could reach out with a magic feather and say, okay, I'm going to get the money, I'm going to get the technology, the national commitment, everything that's needed to get human beings on Mars, how long could it be done? How soon could we get human beings on Mars?
I think that if we did it the way I think it can be done and should be done, it's entirely feasible to launch the first part of the mission, which is an unmanned part, an Earth return vehicle that you send out to Mars to make its return fuel on Mars, send that in 2005, and send the crew after it in 2007, and they'd land in 2008. And we could do this...
That's 12 years from now. Buzz, how much sense does this make to you? You've studied this stuff, you've just written a book, science fiction book, but a lot of fact in there. How much sense does Dr. Zubrin's plan make to you?
I think Bob is right on when he talks about using extraterrestrial resources and not taking the fuel to Mars, using the atmosphere of Mars and or other means to produce the return fuel. And I think we can get there a lot sooner maybe than a lot of people think. But I think we need a deliberate way of getting there. I think we need to guarantee sustainability. If we're going to go to Mars, I don't think we should go once, twice, 3 times and then pack up our bags and say, that's too expensive. I think we have to build in reusability, and that means reusable heavy lift rockets, and that means reusable spacecraft that are going to and from Mars.
Who has to do what in America and or around the world to make this, all of this business of space exploration, Mars, whether it's more robots on Mars or putting human beings on Mars, who has to do what to make this the kind of priority that we will, as a nation and or globe, commit to do it?
Well, there's a space summit happening in January between the President and key members of Congress to address specifically the space budget. Because right now NASA's budget's dropping precipitously. It's just going down like crazy, and we're not going to be able to do much of anything. So if they can recover the budget, I think that's what the first thing that has to happen is the budget has to be sustained. The second thing that has to happen is we have to learn to do things cheap. And I wanted to point out that we are now making robotic Mars missions for the price of motion pictures. The Pathfinder mission and the Mars Global Surveyor mission cost the same as the movie Waterworld, and the ones that we're sending in '98 are going to be half that price. Now, we apply those same principles to human space flight. We can get the cost down by an order of magnitude, and I think we'll be well on our way.
And when we come back, maybe we'll find out about what if we bring the private sector into this, what might happen, but that's a whole other question. Another question, can we survive on Mars? Can we even get there really safely and in very good health? Shannon Lucid, Dr. Zubrin, just talked about, recently did spend 6 months in space, weightless. What did the doctors learn from that experience of hers? We'll find out from a former astronaut doctor right after this. If you feel cheated that you might not make it into space during your lifetime, consider this. Maybe you can go after your lifetime. A private company is marketing what it calls celestial burials. They tell us that cremated remains will be launched into space. Before their deaths, Gene Roddenberry and Timothy Leary, among others, signed up. The company's press release suggests this, quote, "You'll orbit the Earth until you vaporize like a blazing shooting star in final tribute," end quote.